Yeah.
Good evening, Sreeram. How are you?
Good evening, Kiran. Top of the world.
Yeah, thank
As
you.
always. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for accepting this invite to share your experience during the COVID lockdown. The question is, what was your first feeling when COVID lockdown got announced?
Okay. So let me come before the lockdown itself. Sometime in the month of February, when this whole thing of coronavirus was coming around, I was actually posting that it is a wonderful opportunity for the power equations as far as business environment is concerned to get shifted towards countries like India and will not be focused extremely on China. So that was my first thought which came. In fact, I had posted a few things on the Facebook also. So number one. Number two, I never understood the impact of the COVID till March 8th. March 8th, when I boarded the flight to Dubai, when I boarded even in Hyderabad, because I was going to Nairobi, I was thinking that everything is absolutely normal. Nothing is going to happen in a big way. We're overreacting. But the moment I reached Dubai airport, and specifically to the launch, that is when I realized that, oh, this is not exactly what we all thought. It is bigger than what we had assumed. When I saw people coughing and when the people in the lounge wanted to protect me and put me in a corner because I was staying the entire night. The next morning was my flight. And the kind of reactions which I heard from the people working in the lounge, that is when I realized that things are beyond our control. I was in favor of a lockdown. I landed in Hyderabad on March, if I'm right, 20th. I caught the last available flight and came down, and I kept tweeting even to tagging the Prime Minister saying that we need a lockdown, because by that time I'd understood this whole thing. I knew for sure that lockdown is going to affect the economy, but at the same time, a country like India, we do not have the medical infrastructure to get patients admitted. Forget about treated and all those stuff. If the lockdown had not been announced, probably by the middle of April, we would have seen dead bodies on the roads. I'm trying to be, you may say that I'm trying to be pessimistic. No, it would have really caused a disaster.
Yeah. Okay, let's now proceed to the next question. What changed when the lockdown got extended? And it was extended again and again to you.
Okay. I, for one, never thought that I would be doing webinars. Let me give you an example. In September, I was sitting with my client, who is also my client and also my digital marketing designer. I said, I want to get into webinar, but I don't even know how effective or good it will be. So he said, Sreeram, why don't you can't do a webinar like that. Let us do first 10 or 12 series of webinars, which are with your friends and very close friends and clients who have already experienced you, and then we can go live. So don't go live before that. But I never did that. This was in September 2019 because I was extremely busy and I didn't take that route. The first webinar I took was a paid webinar by a client who came to me and said, Sreeram, I need a session from you. Lockdown is happening and people do not know how to handle this, including the top managers. So everybody is going to attend, the top management and the middle-level management, and you have to run a webinar. That's when I started, April 9th. And in the first session, let me tell you, I didn't even know how to share a screen in Zoom. The first time I'm entering, and this is a paid webinar, let me tell you, not a free one. But that evening, I hosted a free webinar. I think you may have also attended that on that April 9th. I'm not very sure about that. Okay, so everything about my business has changed. In the sense, I would say, nothing has changed and everything has changed. When I say nothing has changed, I'm doing what I continue to do. What I've been doing for the last 22 years, I'm doing. Training is what I'm doing. Speaking is what I'm doing. Consulting is what I'm doing. Mentoring is what I'm doing. But the mode, the delivery model has changed. Completely changed. And I have understood through my own effort and also people who have succeeded and people who are not succeeding. It is no more the survival of the fittest. It is the survival of the fastest, the swiftest, and the quickest to change. And even now, people are not embracing change. And when WHO comes and says that silver shot is not available, which means vaccine, and may not even be available, that's what they're saying, which means that we need to know how to live in a world, I would call it as PCAD. Now it is pre-corona or pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19. This is the new world. This is a new order. That's it.
It was very nice to hear survival of the fittest changing to survival of the fastest and the survival of the quickest. I think can't agree more on that front. And also you mentioning about how quickly the delivery model changed in line with the need of the hour.
Yeah.
So that said, if you want to just reflect upon, how did Sreeram react or respond when this was shaping up?
Okay. Very interesting question. I'm basically an action-oriented guy. I have lived out of, you know about me, I live out of suitcases and lounges and airports and hotels. I don't stay in a place for more than 5 or 6 days, to be honest with you. So when I was put on lockdown, the first few days, I was in quarantine, home quarantine, having traveled from abroad. So I didn't even have a clue. I didn't know what was happening. And everybody, when I see Facebook, people started talking about Amazon, people started talking about Netflix and all those stuff. My immediate thing was, I cannot sit idle. So the first thing which happened was, okay, I had a book to complete, which was a book on public speaking, power of human voice. So I said, let me write 2,500 words every day and get into it. So that was my first reaction. My first reaction was, what can I do? Being an action-oriented guy, what can I do? Obviously, I cannot call any client and ask them for a business. So let me not look at it from that perspective. Let me look at it from what I can do, writing a book. So I could quickly start wrapping up my first book. And as it was happening, this client of mine, CVS Shipping, asked me to do this webinar, which turned out to be the turning point on April 9th. As quickly as April 9th. April 4th or 5th, he called me up, April 9th. So from then onwards, webinar. And after the second webinar, I realized that, or third webinar, I realized on April 13th that this concept itself can become a book, because see, Kiran, it's like this. Don't look at it as an exaggerated statement of mine. I'm telling you very honestly. Deep down in my subconscious mind, I felt, fortunately or unfortunately, COVID-19 has happened. And an event of this kind, to be a witness to this event, I feel you got to be fortunate. Because not everybody in the world would have had the opportunity to have had the maturity. I'm not a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or even a 25-year-old who is starting his life. I'm not an 80-year-old who has ended his life. I'm at the midpoint of my life. I've seen a lot of things in my life and I have a lot of things to see. So I cannot be a passive spectator to this. I have to do something. And that's the reason why No Reference Point was born. My reaction was, what can I do? How can I use this? Because to me, it's a very simple thing. Crisis reveals champions. Calamity reveals champions. Calamities do not produce or create champion. They reveal champion. Look at a cricket match. 17 for 5. Kapil Dev did not create. He revealed the stuff he was made of. So to me, my reaction is, I felt deep inside that this calamity is going to reveal who Sreeram is to the world outside. That was my reaction.
That was wonderful and insightful. The reference of how to convert this opportunity into completing your book. And you also mentioned about not to be a passive spectator. I think which is something which most of us need to look at it that way, and not just be there as a spectator, and also thinking about what you just mentioned. What can I do? And the last line was very inspiring, which is crisis reveals the champions. I think if one looks at it that way, there will be many more champions probably which would emerge from this COVID crisis. The way
bang on. You would see. I'm seeing. You have seen. Because see, what is the point in being a motivational speaker or whatever? I'm not a motivational speaker. I call myself as an international keynote speaker. What is the point in me going around saying some people see things happen, some people make things happen, some people wonder how things happen? Now, to make those statements, anybody can make, but what did you do?
Can't agree more. So let's move to the next one. While this was all happening with Sriram and in the surroundings as well, how did this affect you or impact you emotionally, mentally, last but not the least, financially?
Okay. You have asked emotionally, I would say mentally, emotionally, and mentally, I grew very strong. I grew very strong the day I set a target that I should write 2,500 words and I could write 3,000 words. That revealed me to myself. Okay. So mentally, I grew very strong that I can do something. I discovered myself. Emotionally, I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people, not just materialistically. Materialistically, I could do immediately. What I could do was raise funds. Raised funds. Few lakhs was generated, and wanted to help people. So that was there. But I wanted to help in a bigger way. In fact, if you look at it, the first 30 to 35 days, I did not even look at it from an economic model of what am I going to get. I just kept giving free webinars. In fact, a lot of people kept telling me, Sreeram, all your courses, you're giving it free. I said, no, it's not about that. If it can help people. So my only thought was, what should be the next topic of my webinar was basically, what topic will help people to survive and succeed this time? So if my first topic was succeeding through the pandemonium times, second, immediately I said, okay, let me talk about selling. Because if we don't sell, we can't make money. So we need to have top sales guys. So every webinar, so that's how it is. Third, financially, I would say that one, I had an advantage that a couple of my payments were pending. And these were from a top organizations, from a very big organization, and they will not run away. So I knew pretty well for the next few months, I have some payments which have to come, which would certainly come, and which will take care of me. Okay. Number two, so as a result of which, pretty well your when you have, it's like, money is in the bank. The only thing is it was in my client's place. Only thing I knew that it would take some time. So that was one good thing. Number two, slowly as I kept adding value to people in terms of giving free webinars, I think I've been able to also run online courses. And as a result of which, I can tell you at this point in time that I am able to financially manage myself. I'm not saying that, in fact, I've even put one of my quote also, to go anywhere to where you were pre-COVID time, you have to put 300% more efforts, which is really true. Okay. But I think I would also be very honest here. I'm also constantly looking at which are the companies which are doing well, which are the sectors who are doing well, who can actually afford, who can pay, who needs those services. So because there is no point in going to a hospitality company now and telling them that I will train you guys and give me money, because they can't. But I can go to an agriculture sector company and ask them. And because I've always believed it is the people who are doing well who would have to invest and would keep doing even better. The guys who are at the bottom, we can help them, but they can't be giving to us anything financially. So that is my financial model. I hope I've answered your question.
I think that clarity itself is pretty, you can say, assuring and comforting. And I'm glad to hear about how you handled the mental situation of it to get stronger. And you also mentioned how emotionally you did your best beyond providing monetary support, and financially how you navigated the situation which came without a announcement. What are Sriram's key takeaways from this chapter of life? I recall you mentioned about, in a way, one should feel fortunate to be able to witness something of this magnitude, and how they lived along with it and progressed. So, in that context, what are the key takeaways for Sriram from this chapter?
Key takeaway number one is being action oriented. Whomsoever you are, I think if you are at the bottom of the pyramid or the CEO of an organization, I think we all have to, number one, be action oriented. There is no point in brooding, number one. Number two, I think the age old saying that save for a rainy day. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think, I've not been a big saver, but I think, I've become very conscious about my spends. I'm thinking about financial security in a bigger manner, and being more bothered about taking care of yourself in terms of wearing the mask and navigs, taking yourself sanitized and all those stuff. So health consciousness, financial consciousness, because I've also been a kind of guy, in as far as finance is concerned. Okay, tomorrow I have the talent, I have the capability, so I will earn the money, not a problem at all. So I used to live that kind of a life. I think I'm becoming slowly conscious about it. In terms of preparing for the future, apart from whatever I've told you in terms of the change and all those things, the opportunity, look at it, helping people, reaching out. The big takeaway is these are the things.
Great to hear that. So with that, let's move to the last question, which would be, I think, very interesting. What would Sreeram like to tell the world if, unfortunately, a similar kind of a situation were to emerge in their lifetime? How should they attend to it if it were to happen again?
Number one, don't look at things which you cannot control. I think we have to all look at it in our life itself in a manner where, what are the things which matter to you? What are the things which you can control? I think people have been too bothered about things which they cannot control. So look at, first and foremost, it is not a question of whether something of this kind will happen in future or not. Even even from now onwards, this is the way it should be. Live in your circle of influence and not in your circle of concern. Too many people are spending too much of time in the circle of concern. Because, see, there is so much of talk about what government should do, what this should do, what you should do. Put yourself at the center. This will happen again. These pandemics will happen. Will it happen in this scale? God knows. But will it happen? Certainly it will happen. Certainly the world is already seeing second waves.
Yeah.
Okay. And get back to the roots and values. What are your value systems?
Great.
And don't take anything for granted. Don't take anything for granted. Okay. If you have a job, love the job. Okay, which I've been telling you, right? Which I've been telling from time immemorial. I would tell them, as long as you're working, love the job. Don't crib about where you're working. Don't crib about your business. Stop complaining. So that's all.
I like the importance that you gave to the roots and the values, and how important it is to be in the circle of influence. The thought of that being in the circle of influence itself is giving me that, you can say, goosebumps. Or I think if everyone chooses to be in the circle of influence, the kind of impact it can be on the society, I think it's just can't imagine. It seems to be such a blissful thing to be in the circle of influence versus just staying in the circle of concern and saying what government didn't do, someone else didn't do, and so on and so forth. Even in organizations, what organization didn't do for me, rather than what I did or how I contributed to the organization during these times.
So I have something to add on this, Kiran. Okay, because your summarizing is very nice, very nicely. It gives me more thoughts. People do not want to be in the circle of influence because when you are in the circle of influence, you are held responsible for what you did and what you did not do. When you are in the circle of concern, you are holding others responsible and accountable for what they did and what they did not do. Since by nature, most of us do not want to be held accountable and held responsible. Instead, we want to make others accountable and responsible for what they did and what they did not do. People tend to go into the circle of concern more than to be in the circle of influence. I've seen it in very close quarters.
Mm-hmm. I think,
it might look like a philosophizing. It is the truth of life. And this is a takeaway for me, and this is a takeaway for the world also.
I should honestly confess that I didn't plan for this conversation going to the point of circle of concern and influence. In fact, it is throwing out so much of the reality what I'm witnessing to what the concept is saying is so well connected that it's a pleasant surprise to me, and I think delightful part of this conversation, that how if I can share with my friends, fraternity, and other colleagues, and who are all worried about their jobs and so on, is why don't we shift from the circle of concern to the circle of influence? And you shared the psychological reasons why we do what we are doing, and we need to cut that thought process and switch to the being in the circle of influence. So that was a key takeaway. Thanks for that. And bringing back to another point which you shared, you mentioned don't look at things one cannot control. And I could notice how you put your own numbers as a Six Sigma professional. I was watching those numbers coming out, 300% more effort and 2,500 words a day. I could relate, and no point of brooding. I could relate how these tangible or a specific targets would help one in achieving the goal, because I am aware that you successfully completed the book and it is about to get published. I think I cannot agree more how impactful this clarity and a goal with a specific measurable can do to one. And if it can do to one, I'm sure if everyone practices it, probably it can do a lot more good to everyone who would practice, even if it probably does not completely turn around things for them. I think they would leave it them in the best place they can in that period of time.
I'll give you one more thing, Kiran. I don't know whether I don't know whether what will be useful in your conversation or not. I don't know. I'm just sharing. If I had not written my book, what I would have done? I would do something. As humans, we are supposed to do something. You cannot sit idle for a long time. So think about, visualize if I had not written the book, because the book kept me on my toes. Because to complete a book of 300 or 350 pages in a span of 2 months is humanly impossible. I'm telling you. Ask anybody, any author in the world, it is humanly impossible. And literally that was the time it took. In fact, if you ask me exactly, it took me only 35 days. 30 days, I can say. Because by the time my first interview started, it was May 20th, and the book manuscript got over on June 18th. So look at it, less than 1 month. Major portion. If I had not done that, what would I have done? I would have spent time on television. I would have tweeted on what the government should be doing. I would have tweeted on how many tests Telangana government should do. Now, if I'm saying based on the research which I'm doing for the sake of the book.
True.
So humanity has to do something. If you don't do things in your circle of influence, if you don't do things which you can control, what you will do? You will do things which matters to you, but which is not in your control. So what is circle of concern? Things which matter to you, but is not in your circle, which you cannot control. So that is what is happening. I want you to add this.
It's a wonderful conversation, Sreeram. Most of it will definitely go into, and actually the circle of concern and circle of influence left me inspired to think more on this area and be a contributor. I think another powerful line what you ended saying was about how humanity has to do something. I believe I would start saying this to myself, and I think I'll try to pass on the message through the video as well as through to friends, that it's making that difference what we can matters more than everything else that is happening around or everything else that we can be part of. So it's a fantastic conversation. For once, I would request you to share the title of the book and details so that I will share a link on the video as well, and I would have some of my friends proceed to consider reading this book, which is the best book probably to read in this time. It can't be a more contextual thing.
The book's name is No Reference Point. The thing is the ultimate handbook to succeed amidst the pandemonium times of COVID-19 and beyond. That is the theme of the book.
Thanks a lot for your time, Sreeram, and
my pleasure.
The very best for the book launch.
My pleasure, Kiran. It's always a pleasure to converse with you.